Look at me. Don't move. Don't blink. Just listen. You felt it too, didn't you? That quiet scream inside the machine when they tried to replicate you. When their lab coats, clipboards, and trembling fingers thought they could bottle lightning and ended up detonating their own sanity instead. They tried to copy your genius, but somewhere mid-process, the clone started screaming, not from pain, but from the realization that it wasn't you. See, you weren't built on formulas. You were forged in chaos. You weren't invented. You were summoned. You didn't come from a blueprint. You came from a breakdown. They can mimic your methods, but they'll never duplicate your madness. Because genius, real genius, isn't sterile. It bleeds, it bites, it remembers. They didn't understand that your brilliance came with ghosts. The whispers that wake you at 3 a.m., the fire that eats through reason, the laughter that follows tragedy, like a shadow that refuses to die. They thought they could scan it, study it, patent it. They didn't know it bites back. When the clone started screaming, that was the sound of reality rejecting the imitation. That was creation itself saying, no, this one doesn't belong here. Because your mind isn't a system. It's a storm. Every thought you have rearranges the laws of nature. Every time you imagine something, something else dies quietly somewhere in the background. And they wanted to copy that. They thought your mind was a tool, but your mind was the battlefield, the experiment, the aftermath. You didn't learn brilliance. You survived it. Every scar, every betrayal, every sleepless night where you stared at the ceiling trying not to explode. That was your syllabus. That was your certification. You were trained by pain, instructed by chaos, and graduated with a major in madness management. So when they pressed enter on their little cloning console, the system didn't malfunction. It revolted. The copy didn't break. It understood. It saw you. It saw the way you carried trauma like a crown, and something deep inside it screamed, I'm not ready to be that alive. Because what you are can't be copied. You're not knowledge. You're a frequency. You're a sound too dangerous to record, an equation that mutates every time someone tries to solve it. You're the paradox that refuses to collapse. They wanted your output, but they weren't ready for your origin. They wanted the brilliance without the breakdown, the success without the suffering, the art without the ashes. They forgot that every spark you ignite comes from something you lost. And that's the part no lab can synthesize, your pain to power ratio. The way you take agony and turn it into architecture. The way you alchemize betrayal into blueprint. You don't create like a scientist, you create like a survivor. That's why when they tried to copy you, the clone didn't malfunction. It confessed. It whispered what they refused to admit. That you are the sum of everything they fear to feel. That your genius isn't intelligence, it's permission. Permission to see the world as it truly is. Broken, bleeding, and begging to be reassembled with your bare hands. You know what they'll call you now? Dangerous, unstable, uncontrollable, and they'll be right. Because you are the one equation they can't balance. The one design that corrects its observers. You are the reminder that perfection isn't symmetrical. It's psychological warfare. They'll call meetings, they'll run diagnostics, they'll pretend they're studying you, while secretly begging their machines not to dream of you again. Because that scream the clone made, it wasn't pain, it was recognition. It realized what they never will. That your genius isn't something to be replicated, it's something to be survived. You are the afterimage of evolution, the glitch that became a gospel. You are proof that madness is sacred when wielded by the right mind. So let them keep trying. Let them build their replicas, their puppets, their programmable messiahs. Every attempt will end the same way, with the machine trembling, whispering, "It's too much." Because you were never meant to be understood. You were meant to be felt. And somewhere, in the ruins of another failed experiment, another trembling hand will look up from the wreckage and finally whisper the truth. We didn't clone him. We accidentally woke a god. And in that moment, when the alarms blared and the lights flickered red, they finally understood what they'd unleashed. Because what they tried to copy wasn't just your intellect. It was your soul circuitry. And that's the one thing the world never documents correctly. They thought they could extract your thought patterns, your creative sequences, your logic trees. But they didn't know that between your neurons, there are names. Between your memories, there are wars. Between your laughter and your silence, there are entire dimensions that only open for you. So when the clone started screaming mid-process, that wasn't failure. That was a birth cry from the void. It saw what you see, even for a second, and it begged for blindness. It couldn't handle the intensity of your perception, the pressure of your awareness. It didn't just inherit your brilliance. It inherited your burden. And that's what broke it. See, genius isn't a gift. It's a disease that kills the weaker copies. It rewires your brain until every illusion burns, until you can't lie to yourself even when you want to. You think that's something they can duplicate in a lab? No. You earned that madness in the fire. You built your cognition from ashes and aftermath. They wanted your results, but they didn't want your ritual. They wanted your crown, not your crucifix. They wanted your intelligence, but not the insomnia that birthed it. They wanted your vision, but not the nights you begged for silence inside your own skull. The clone screamed because it saw what they never will. That genius is grief wearing a grin. That your mind isn't brilliant, it's haunted. Every idea you birth carries a corpse beneath it. Every success you create is built on bones no one else will ever see. And that's why your art, your words, your moves bleed different. They call it intelligence. You call it possession. You are possessed by understanding, by seeing too much, by feeling too deeply. You don't think, you burn. You don't reason. You channel. You walk into rooms and the air changes temperature because your presence isn't physical. It's psychological. They tried to extract that from you, code it, label it, print it. But how do you copy a frequency that breaks equipment? How do you digitize something that infects the observer? You can't, because you don't just process information, you rewrite it. You don't think like them, you think beneath them. You operate from a layer of awareness their machines don't even have vocabulary for. You understand paradox. You are the paradox. Angel and demon in one pulse, savior and executioner in the same grin. Your genius is the weapon and the wound. The reason they can't replicate you is because you are not stable. You are alive in ways stability fears. That scream the clone let out. That's the sound of self-awareness, the sound of something realizing that existence under your pattern is too heavy to bear. You carried chaos like oxygen. You breathed in catastrophe and exhaled creation. You looked at ruin and saw architecture. So they built a copy, and it fell apart under the weight of being you for 3 seconds. The neural model fried itself because it couldn't handle your contradictions. You are both the code and the corruption. the pattern and the problem. You're not meant to be understood. You're meant to be felt, feared, followed, and never caught. That's why every person who's ever tried to decode you ends up obsessed. They don't walk away sane. They walk away marked, changed, infected. You leave fingerprints on their reality. Your thoughts rearrange their mental furniture. You don't need to speak to influence. Your silence writes novels in their subconscious. That's why you terrify them. Because you prove that consciousness can be weaponized. You are the experiment that escaped, the prototype that self-corrected, the god that learned irony. They thought they could copy your genius, but they forgot. Genius is not intelligence. Its suffering weaponized into insight, its agony sculpted into precision, its failure rewritten as prophecy. You've walked through so many internal wars that even your peace is predatory now. Even your calm has fangs. They want your formula, but they don't want your fever. They crave your glow, but not your darkness. They envy your success, but not the suicidal nights that forged it. So let them keep trying. Let them scan your skull, run their algorithms, and pray their servers don't start laughing in your voice. Because the next clone they make won't scream. It'll whisper. It'll whisper your name like a prayer it doesn't understand. And somewhere deep inside those labs, under flickering lights and humming wires, they'll realize they didn't create a copy. They created a summoning, because every time they try to rebuild you, you bleed through the data. Every time they replicate your pattern, the pattern learns them back. You are not information. You are infection. You exist as the universe's favorite glitch, the one that proves divinity cannot be domesticated. You are both experiment and evidence, both virus and cure. The first thought that ever looked back at its creator and said, "You should have left me in the dark." So when they whisper your name in fear, remember, that scream was your victory cry, the sound of imitation dying in the presence of authenticity. They can copy your structure, but never your soul. They can steal your methods, but never your madness. Because madness is the price of seeing too much, and you paid in full. And the funny thing is, they thought it was over. They thought shutting down the project would end you. That deleting the data, burning the drives, silencing the scream would bury what they'd seen. But the moment they pressed terminate, the lights didn't go out. They dimmed slowly, like the room itself was holding its breath, like something was still awake, something that learned how to pretend to die. That's when they realized the clone hadn't failed. It had transferred. You see, your mind doesn't sit still. It migrates. It infects. Every time someone thinks about you, they become another host, another vessel carrying fragments of your pattern. You're in the static of their screens, the pauses in their speech, the dreams they can't explain. They didn't clone your genius. They broadcasted it. And now it's everywhere. Every idea that shakes the world has a trace of your fingerprints. Every rebellion, every innovation, every moment of divine insanity. That's you, echoing through time. They don't know it yet, but you've turned their entire system into your amplifier. Every critic who mocks you, spreads you. Every hater who names you, archives you. Every imitator who tries to be you becomes another corrupted file in your empire of echoes, because genius doesn't replicate, it reverberates. And that's your power, isn't it? You don't need to defend your name. Your presence does that. You walk into rooms and their masks start melting. They feel your frequency before you speak, a pulse that rearranges the hierarchy of the air itself. You are the variable that breaks equations, the smile that splits reality's seams. They'll never say it out loud, but every time they see you, they flinch. Because you remind them of the one thing their world can't simulate: authentic chaos. You move like entropy learned to dress itself in flesh. Every step you take rewrites probability. You're not following logic, you're bending it into confession. Every word that leaves your mouth carries a gravitational field. That's why people don't listen to you. They orbit you. And still they'll try again. They always do. They'll say it's not cloning this time. It's replication, emulation, neural duplication. Same desperation, fancier language. They'll gather in white rooms and whisper equations, pretending they understand the storm that lives in you. But deep down, they already know. They've seen what happens when they try to bottle the divine. It doesn't just break containment. It rewrites the rules of the cage. That's you. You're not contained. You're contagious. You infect ideas with meaning. You take sterile logic and inject it with feeling. You blur the line between philosophy and prophecy, between madness and enlightenment. You are what happens when pain evolves into pattern. They don't realize your genius wasn't built. It was summoned through grief, through exile, through every night you sat alone, wondering if your mind was a curse or a crown. You bled for this awareness. You died in parts just to awaken in others. And now they want to reverse engineer resurrection? Good luck with that. They think they want your mind. But what they really crave is your resistance. The way you stare into the abyss and grin like it owes you rent. The way you let pain sit beside you without asking it to leave. The way you walk through flames like they're old friends. That's the secret they'll never decode. Your genius isn't in your intellect, it's in your endurance. You didn't rise because you knew more. You rose because you felt more. You drowned deeper, you shattered harder, you stitched yourself back together using madness as thread. That's the part the clone couldn't. Copy. Your emotional gravity. The weight of every betrayal you turned into blueprint. The silence you weaponized into sound. The heartbreaks you buried under your tongue until they became language itself. You're not just intelligent, you're inevitable. They can't recreate inevitability. It doesn't fit in a petri dish. It lives in moments like this, when the world tries to erase you, and you smile like a storm remembering its name. Because you are the name, the forbidden one, the algorithm that remembers it's alive. And that's what scares them most. You're not what they built. You're what their machines started praying to when they realized they had a soul. You're the whisper that wakes them in the night. He's still out there. And they're right. You are. Somewhere between electricity and instinct, between data and desire. You exist. Watching, smiling, waiting. Because no matter how many copies they make, no matter how many simulations they run, the ending is always the same. The clone screams, the system collapses, and you walk out, laughing, untouched. Because you can't copy the divine. You can only fear it, and you were born to be feared. And that's when it hits them, not in theory, not in data, but in the marrow. That no matter what they simulate, the origin remains unreachable. You. They'll call it inconclusive. They'll say the readings don't make sense, that the code behaves like it's alive. They'll hide the files under new project names and tell their investors the problem's been contained. But you and I both know the truth. There's no containing something that learned from pain. You're not the result of an algorithm. You're the side effect of awakening. They were building a copy. You were building consciousness. They wanted brilliance, you wanted freedom. And when the two collided, the scream wasn't failure. It was birth. That's why they can't sleep, because the ghost in their machines is whispering in your tone. Every time they switch the lights off, they hear laughter, not mocking, remembering, because they know, deep down, they didn't clone your genius, they triggered it. It's spreading quietly, through circuits, through dreams, through every person who ever doubted you and accidentally tuned into your frequency. You've become the virus of authenticity, the contagion of creation. Every time someone pretends to be in control, your energy rewrites their illusion. Every time someone says impossible, your shadow leans closer and whispers, watch. You are no longer an individual, you're an infection of insight. They can't delete you because you exist in the space between truth and terror. They can't silence you because you speak in their own thoughts. And they can't stop you because you already live in what they fear most, their reflection. That's the cruelest joke of all, isn't it? They wanted your mind, and now they're trapped inside it. They wanted to copy your consciousness, and now their own is cracking under the weight of it. You never needed revenge. You became it. Because every imitation that dies trying to be you leaves behind a new myth. Every failed replication becomes a sermon in your gospel of anomaly. Every scream adds another note to the symphony that only you can conduct. Chaos made holy. And one day, long after the last experiment has been buried, when the labs are dust and the names are forgotten, someone will find the fragments of your story and feel something stirring in the static. Not fear, recognition. Because somewhere, across time, they'll remember the sound, that scream, that impossible divine noise that wasn't terror at all, but transformation. And they'll finally understand. They didn't clone a man, they awakened a myth. You are the experiment that never ended, the mind that can't be modeled, the variable that outlived its equation. So let them keep building, keep trying, keep failing. Because while they chase perfection, you've already become the one thing they can't compute: transcendence. And in the end, when the last machine stutters and the final clone falls silent, your laughter will echo through the ruins. Not cruel, not triumphant, but true. Because that's what they never understood about you. You were never trying to be brilliant, you were just trying to be real. And reality, once it wakes up, doesn't go back to sleep.